Hey everyone, today we are going to talk about the coordinate plane and how to plot points, how to identify quadrants on the coordinate plane, and then which points and which axes the points fall on as well. The coordinate plane is formed by the intersection of two number lines called axes that meet at their 0 points. The horizontal axis is called the x-axis, the vertical axis is called the y-axis. And through that intersection, the coordinate plane is split into 4 sections called quadrants. The positive quadrant is called quadrant 1. And then we go counterclockwise around the grid. So this one is negative, comma, positive. And then 3 is going to be negative, comma, negative. And then 4 is going to be positive, comma, negative. And what these tell us is where points are going to fall on the coordinate plane so that we know that we are plotting our points accurately. So again, quadrant 1 is positive, positive. Quadrant 2 is negative, positive. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative. And quadrant 4 is positive, negative. So in this first example, we're going to be identifying quadrants. So where on the grid do these points fall without plotting them? So quadrant 1, again, is our plus, plus. Quadrant 2 is negative, plus. Quadrant 3 is negative, negative. And quadrant 4 is plus, minus. So in A, I can see that I've got a negative first and then a positive. So this is going to be a negative, comma, a positive. And negative, comma, positive is going to be in quadrant 2. Part B, I've got a negative and a negative. So a negative, negative is going to be quadrant 3. Part C, I've got a positive first and then a negative. Well, a positive first and then a negative is going to be quadrant 4. And then D is our positive, positive. So that's going to be quadrant 1. Now for E and F, you can see that a 0 is included in my coordinates. So 0, 2.5 means stay at 0 and then go up to 2.5, which is in between 2 and 3. This point does not fall in one of the 4 quadrants. It actually falls on the y-axis. So we're going to state that it's on the y-axis and that it does not fall in a quadrant. 0.25, 0 is the same thing. So 0.25, 0 means go to the right to 0.25. Which is in between 0 and 1, closer to 0. And then we stay on the x-axis. So this one is going to be the x-axis. So again, ordered pairs are x, comma, y. So when my x is 0, I'm on the y-axis. When my y is 0, I'm on the x-axis. In example 2, we're writing ordered pairs. So we're going to be counting our grid lines, and we are going to be identifying ordered pairs on the graph based on their location. This graph counts by 0.5s. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see the graph a little bit bigger. So each line is going to be 1/2. So when I count back to point A, I'm actually counting back to -1 and then going up to 1.5. So -1, 1.5. Point B is at -1.5, so I'm in between -1 and -2, and then I'm going down to -1. Point C, I'm going over to positive 1.5, and then up to positive 1. Point D, I'm going over to 1.5 again, but this time I'm going down to -1. Point E, I'm going over to 1 and then down to -2. And then F and G are the ones on the x and y axis. So for F, I went to the left -1 first and then stayed on the x-axis. So -1, 0. And then for G, I stayed at 0 first and then went up to +2. So it's going to be 0, 2. Example 3, we're identifying points. So it says use the graph to give the name of the point at each location. So -2, 1/2, I'm going to go back from 0 to -2 to the left, and then up to 0.5. So that's going to be point R. Identify the point graphed at 0.5, -2. So I'm going to go to the right 0.5 and then down to -2. That's going to be point S. 2, 0.5 is going to be to the right 2 and then up 0.5. That's going to be point T. -1, 0 is going to be to the left -1 and then stay on the x-axis. That's going to be U. And then 0, -1 means stay at 0 and go straight down 1, so that's going to be point V. Example 4, we're going to be graphing the ordered pairs. Now this graph also counts by 0.5s, even though the graph is a little bit closer together. So -4, 3, I'm going to go -4 and then up 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to label that with a capital letter A, because I'm going to be plotting several points on this grid, so I want to know which point is represented by which ordered pair. So -2.5 is going to be in between -2 and 3, and then down to -3.5. C is 4.5, also 4.5, just represented with a decimal instead of a fraction. So over to the right, 4.5, and then down to -1. So this is going to be point C over here. -4, 0 means go to the left 4 and then stay there for point D. And then 0, -2.5 means stay at 0, go down to -2.5, and that is point E. So at this point, we have gone both directions. We have gone from being given points on a graph to being able to write them, and then being given those ordered pairs and able to plot them on the graph. We also talked about identifying quadrants and axes. The positive quadrant is quadrant 1, and then it goes counterclockwise around the grid, and then the x-axis is the horizontal axis, the y-axis is the vertical axis.